Helo pawb, helo. Hi everyone. Noswaith dda, helo. Croeso mawr i chi. Croeso mawr i chi heno yma i'r staff, i'r myfyrwyr ag i aelodau o'r cyhoedd sydd yma i wrando ar y ddarlith yma heno yma. Fe enw i di Awel Wyn Williams. Dwi'n ddarlithydd nyrsio plant yma ym Mhrifysgol Wrexham ag yma i ddarparu yr elfen Gymraeg i'r noson heno yma. Mi fydd y ddarlith yn cael ei gynnal trwy gyfrwng y Saesneg, ond mae yna gyfle i chi holi cwestiynau ar y diwedd. Felly, os ydych chi eisiau holi'ch cwestiwn yn Gymraeg yn y sesiwn holi ag ateb, mi fyddai yna i gyfieithu ag i helpu chi mewn unrhyw ffordd. Felly, gobeithio bod chi gyd wedi setlo, wedi cael wbath neis i fita. Gobeithio bod chi wedi bod yn mwynhau'r haul. Mi fyddai'n pasio drosodd i Prof Alec nesaf, a fydd hi'n cadeirio'r noson a'r ddarlith ac yn cyflwyno ein siaradwr heddiw. So welcome everybody, staff, students and members of the public to this lovely evening. Well done for making it out of the sun. I hope you've had something nice to eat and you feel settled and ready for tonight's lovely talk. My name is Awel Wyn Williams. I'm a children's nursing lecturer here at Wrexham University. And I'm here today just to help with the Welsh element of the night. The lecture this evening will be done through the medium of English. However, there will be a Q&A session at the end, and I am happy to help translate any of the Welsh questions that you might have for the evening. I'll now hand over to Professor Anne Norcliffe, who will be chairing tonight's lecture and introducing our speaker. I hope you enjoy. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
First off, housekeeping. So there is no fire drill anticipated. So if the fire alarm goes off, we exit either from the rear or from the side door, and we meet in the car park as our meeting point. So thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce Professor Alec Shepley tonight. This is accumulation of work which was very much in line with the Future Generations Act in Wales and the Public Map project, allowing our next generation to have an authentic voice in Wales about the future. So I'm going to hand over to Alex to share his wonderful research.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay? Yeah, so hi. Thank you for coming. My name's Alec Shepley. This is the title of my talk. It's going to be a bit of a canter because I've got quite a lot of slides, but the canter will be me. You just need to sit there and relax. But I wanted to start off by saying a thank you to you all for coming, but also, as you'll see, a lot of the work that I'm focusing on tonight will be around the project we did in Anglesey. So I just wanted to make a thank you to Anglesey, the island of Anglesey, and the people of Anglesey, and acknowledge their help and support in the project. So a little bit about me, a very little bit about me. God, I'm blinded. I'm an artist by trade. That's how I trained. But I'm an artist who's interested in the relational aspect of art making, and influenced by this model here by Stephen Willits from around about 1970, which is still relevant today. I think that art is embodied by objects, and it could be music, architecture, poems, whatever, but there's something about the relationship with the context, the audience, and the place, if you like, and the artwork exists in a moment. I think it's a quality rather than an object, but that's just a very, very brief overview of where I'm coming from. I still make stuff, but I'm interested in what the stuff does to me and what I do to it, if that makes sense. So there are three projects that I've, well, there are more than three, but these are the three main projects. But tonight, I'm only going to touch upon the Ecological Citizens and the Co-Producing Community Narratives project, and I'm going to focus on the public map. If I did all three, we would probably need way more than an hour. So the Ecological Citizens project is a multi-million-pound project which includes Wrexham University, Royal College of Art London and the Stockholm Environment Institute at York University It's a 4-year project funded through the EPSRC, the Engineering Research Council. And it's to fund projects, if you like, that bring together individuals, communities, something around ecological citizenship and action, but mobilising the digital. So it's quite a complicated project. It involves quite a large multidisciplinary team, some of whom you see here in the lovely garden at York on one of our away days. So it's a transdisciplinary collaboration. And just one example from the funded projects is this one, where somebody came up with an idea to solve the issue around land use and create a democratic approach to enabling people to acquire disused land for a particular purpose. Maybe it's to do with ecological or biodiverse projects. So the group that came up with this project, they got the funding. There's been 3 tranches of funding over 3 years, and we as a group have been peer reviewing those projects. So they're up and running, and some of them are coming to fruition now. But that's just one example. It's one of many. In Wrexham, we've been doing a number of things. As you can see, we've been working with community growers. We've done a project with young people where they were asked to create short films about ecological practices that they've been up to in their homes, in their communities, in their schools. Because what we were finding is that lots of people are doing ecological things. They don't need to be told by people like us. So we've been going around and finding out what they're doing. Is there a way of replicating it so other people can try something similar in other places, in other parts of the country? We've been doing projects using design approaches to discover how we might draw out the main components and create some kind of toolkit so people can try it out for themselves, whether it's a greenhouse made from plastic milk bottles or whatever. And these are some of the partners that we've worked with, and we had a festival last year at T-Power where lots of people came together. The next one is just co-producing community narratives, a bit of a mouthful. Public service boards in Wales are charged with creating reports. One of the reports that they need to make is a well-being report. And through Rachel Hughes, who's a visiting professor here, we managed to get some funding from Welsh Government, and we decided on an approach to involve communities in their place. We would go to them and use artists as a way of convening a conversation about what's going well and what's not going well in their communities, and I try to manifest that in some kind of co-created art form. So there were 6 communities across North Wales. These are the artists and the places where they produced the work. They produced the work, they produced a report, and that produced a report of all of the projects that went to the public service boards for their use. Because in Wales we have this law, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. It's now over 10 years old, and we're very keen to find out what traction is it having. And the Commissioner is very interested to find out what's working, what's not working, and we're trying to involve ourselves in that, particularly in the cohesive communities and the culture and the language. So that's the kind of backdrop, if you like, for what we're doing. But one of the biggest barriers that we come up against is engagement. It is very, very challenging to engage people in something like a local plan, which doesn't sound particularly exciting, but people do have a lot to say about what's going on in their communities or not going on in their communities, about what assets they do have and what assets they don't have. So typically, only 3% of the population will respond to a planning consultation, so people are not getting the places that they need. Some buildings are being demolished, and people wonder why they using all that resource to get rid of something that could be repurposed. Planning consultation can be overly technical, If any planners in the room, I apologise. I'm not having a go. I'm just saying that we've got a model that we're trying to kind of flex, if you like, because planners are being asked, questions like, do the houses go there or do the houses go there? And that's kind of a bit of a challenge to them. So what we're doing as a group of artists and creatives in the School of Art is thinking, how can we play our part? And luckily, Chris Smith, who's the outgoing chair of the Arts and Humanities Research Council, said that by placing experience of the individual at the heart, arts and humanities approaches will help shape the future, because there's something that we can do with maybe manipulating and shaping that perhaps some of the more orthodox approaches are unable to do. And again, that's not a criticism, that's just the models, that's the tools that we have. So we're trying to kind of add a different kind of tool amongst others. So if that's the kind of backdrop, we thought about this idea of a public map, a freely available resource, a digital sandwich, if you like, in layers, which enable people to build up data that would enable a transparent planning system. And me, Flora Samuels from Cambridge University and Scott Orford from Cardiff University, we got together a few years ago and we wrote this bid and we got this money. It wasn't phase one at the time, it was just the public map platform. It's morphed into the public map, and we based it on Anglesey, largely because it's a defined area. It has challenges, but it has ambition. And the council itself approached Professor Samuel, Flora from Cambridge, and asked her if she was interested in doing something with them, because they had these ideas that they wanted to bring out. So we applied for the AHRC grant, we got it, and it's a collaboration between Cambridge, Cardiff, Wrexham and Bangor University and Anglesey Council, and we're now in our third year, because at the end of the 2 years we applied for more money and we got phase 2 for another 2 years, which was all 4 of the projects. And it was quite a big investment by the AHRC. It was quite a big part of their annual budget to give to the green transitions ecosystems. So they were sort of putting their money where their mouth is. This is the team at an away day, a planning day, and the reason we chose Anglesey, as I've already said, it can feel disconnected, can be considered to be in decline. These are the messages that we were getting from the initial contact with the council, but it wants to be something more than what it is.
The aim of the public map platform is to transform the nature of the planning system in the UK. Typically, very few people get involved in planning. They feel very disempowered. Maybe 1%, 3% might have any kind of say in the making of a local plan. And the public map platform is going to be a sandwich of data which actually enables communities to see what's going on in their place, to make decisions and to actually input more meaningfully into the planning system and have a say on the way that their built environment and their places are created for the future. So the platform itself is a data sandwich, including the usual sort of data layers like census data, but also including data layers that we found. We've been collecting data all over, bringing it in to one spot, all freely available and open source. And we're doing this using OpenStreetMap. Anyone can get involved in adding data to that map wherever they are in the globe. But of course our focus is the pilot here on Ynysmore, Isle of Anglesey in North Wales. We're developing a method to cut the cake up, if you will, and each slice will tell us something about each of the well-being outcomes of the Future Generations Act. Ultimately, we need to be able to make places that are built on evidence of what people want, and in particular what children and young people want, because they're just so disenfranchised from the making of our places. So we need places that are great for everybody to live in, but most of all, great for the children and young people that are our future generations. They are the ones who care about climate change, and they are the ones who really want the world to be a better place. So let's place our faith in them.
So, as you can see, the focus is on children and young people because of the Future Generations Act. And it's those people that we wanted to contact and work with. And the public map, if you imagine a kind of sandwich, as Flora mentioned, the three main layers are social, environmental and cultural. So there were three teams, and I led the cultural team, focusing on working with children and young people using arts and humanities methods and cultural mapping as an approach to reveal a picture of cultural character and the significant workings of a place, and try to kind of work in locations on the island and invite people to us, but we would position ourselves at 4 different places on the island, so in a way we were trying to get ourselves to them as well, rather than expect them to come to us all the time. But the beauty of using poetry, music, singing, dancing, drawing, painting, talking, walking, sensory walks. We did haiku sessions in forest glades at Newborough. People can relax, and I think there's a lot of sense in that. You get truth from comfort, and I think people will start to offer things up without being asked. And I think that was one of our approaches. And also, you're kind of able to cross over perceived boundaries in this kind of area. And we're taking culture at the core of the practice and taking the Welsh Government's lead in that culture is one of the 4 pillars, if you like, for the Future Generations Act and for the economy of the country. It's almost like a kind of frontline service, if you like. And the way creative practice can often bring air to a kind of conversation. It opens things up rather than closes it down. And there are clear benefits. We've been doing our research as we've been going along. We've had researchers as well as practitioners on the project. So I was working with a postdoc called Dr. Tristian Evans, who I've been working with on developing journal articles to capture the contextual research around the bardic tradition and the place of creative methodologies in research, especially around placemaking, and then also adding in what we were doing as practitioners with the children and young people and their friends and families, because they would bring their, there'd be an intergenerational aspect to it because of the nature of working with children and young people. But we initially came up with the idea of wouldn't it be great if we could actually get the word bard into an Arts and Humanities Research Council funding bid. So we went big on this one, and we decided to use the money to employ Welsh bards who were from the area to conduct whatever it was that they felt as part of their practice, to engage. As I said, engagement is one of the hardest things, and we thought this would be a good device or a good model, if you like. So the funding allowed us to employ 3 bards for a couple of years, and they each had a different practice, different approach. They were quite distinctive, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But we've got Rhys Trimble on the left, who is almost walking on water. Gillian Brownson in the middle in one of the structures, and I'll come on to those in a minute. And Lisa Hudson, the third. And each of them, you know, Reese is a musician and a poet. Gillian is a writer and a performer and an illustrator. Lisa is a socially engaged artist. So we used the bardic, we called it a bardic methodology, to reference the culture of Wales and bring forward that kind of historical image of the bard and that painting up there to life, and get ourselves situated alongside children and young people and their friends and families. And we also employed somebody who was a specialist in equality, diversity and inclusion. And she worked with all of the teams to make sure that our material was fit for purpose and enabled us to get to those children and young people who were hard to reach or perhaps didn't want to be reached. So we didn't just go for the kind of the obvious schools. We worked with schools, but also we went around the streets and just sort of did happenings with people. Improvisations. This is the Anglesey Youth Choir, actually, or part of the Anglesey Youth Choir, who worked with Reese to do a project at Oriel Mom. And along the way, we've been documenting it with photography, and we've been making films, because films are quite a good way of getting your message across and capturing it. So Gillian, as I said, she's done some work in the Holyhead Market Hall. She's done a lot of work with schools, and I'll come on to that in a short while. This thing called the Lleichlais storytelling activities. Lleichlais is voice place, I hope, in Welsh, or as close as a translation as I can muster. She produced an Every Child map. These are things that came out of her engagements with the children rather than predetermined outcomes. That's important to say. We didn't go in there saying, we're going to make a song, we're going to make a map. Obviously, mapping was important because it's the public map. But those things came about through our interaction with the children. She's done a storybook, she's done podcasts, and we had enough money left over to actually get one of her books printed. And it's a lovely sort of modern legend based on children's ideas of a giant in Anglesey that came about through her sessions. She's a community-based artist, and she did work at Llangoed over on the kind of eastern tip near Dolores with young people there in the village hall. They've got quite an active art scene there already. But it led to the setup of a youth group, and quite quickly she became involved in a conversation with young people around bus timetables, which she was not expecting. And it was largely to do with this feeling of isolation, that the buses are there, but they come when they don't want them, and they go to places they don't want to go. And they're wondering how they might influence some kind of change. So we were trying to kind of find out, if you like, what's there and how could it be improved, how could it be augmented, if you like. She produced postcard projects using a pre-printed postcard which invited people to do things, much like the ones that you have. So each of the artists produced quite a large body of work themselves, but they also co-created quite a large body of work with the children and young people. Reese was quite a character, and he had a drone, and he did drone videos of gravestones in churches, and he did a map of all places beginning with Clan of Anglesey. He did some fantastic full-scale, large paper rubbings of gravestones and started to create poetry out of the texts from these gravestones. And it was quite fun, actually, because at first I thought, graveyards? And he kind of breathed life into this kind of dead space. And he produced an album And you can buy it. He produced a queer map of Anglesey that was based on a pop-up event that he did in Llangefni, I think it was Llangefni. And it was a really visual kind of parade and an experience. And we've used, as Flora said, we've used OpenStreetMap, but we've also used UMap as ways of developing or taking the stuff from our experiences and digitising it onto the maps. He did ceremonial input and bardic rituals. Some of them were extremely humorous and very, very engaging. This is one of my favourite images from one of Lisa's workshops at Llangoed, and it's a map of the community and all the things that people enjoy around Llangoed, like the beach, the ice cream van, the football pitch. And I just think it's a quite a beautiful image. I just wanted to share it with you, because that sort of epitomises to me, actually. We do this thing at Wrexham University called visualising research. We've been doing it for quite a long time, actually. And I think it's one of the best ways of actually getting some information across that's quite complicated. And if you did it in text, it would become quite linear, and you'd miss out on those kind of connections across the space, if you like. It resulted in an exhibition at Pontio, who were very kind and gave us their exhibition space. And we produced a kind of an installation, if you like, of the three works of the three bards back in September. And you can see again some of the things where Gillian dressed up as a kind of bardic character, and then took people on a kind of bardic ghost walk around Paris Mountain. Lisa did some mapping using water diviners on Paris Mountain to get people thinking about what's underneath the surface, not what's on the surface, what you can see, what's down there, what's going on. And Reece just marched around reciting bardic poetry that he'd been writing around the project of his own on these, you can't quite see them, but they're kind of sprung shoes that are about this far off the ground. He was sort of bounced around playing his trumpet. So we did these projects on the island, and we used some of the funding to employ local people in the role of community mappers, and their job was to work with the bards, work with the schools, work with the three teams, the social, environmental and the cultural, and map all of those activities digitally onto the UMap, onto OpenStreetMap, to create the data sandwich. And there was a team aptly called Wizard at Cardiff University who took all of that data and embedded it so that we have a kind of digital, it's almost like a kind of astrological feature, this public map, when you look at the insides of it. When you look at the sort of website, you'll see a website, but the stuff that goes on behind it is quite amazing. But without this army of mappers, we would not have been able to translate all of that activity into a form, a digital form for others to use, i.e. planners, people writing an area plan, or people who wanted to find out, or people who want to map their own neighbourhood. Now, mapping with young people is not new. This is, for those map lovers out there, this is what I found, 1932 by pupils of the St. Ives Boys' School. And it's an original hand-coloured field sheet at 6 inches to the mile, documenting fields, presumably the red means something and the yellow means something, but it's a beautiful artefact. And you need maps when you're trying to kind of understand the place, and you also need to be mobile. So we developed these structures. We decided to take the urban room concept and do a rural roaming room. Now initially that was going to be a caravan, and that was a bit boring because when we discovered, we presented the idea to a group of children, that was the last thing they wanted, another caravan of Anglesey, come on. You Mancunians, I don't know. So we did a workshop with young people of all sizes at the Caldra Arts Centre with Piers Taylor and George from the Onion Collective. And we asked them to play around with structures, and they started making models out of cardboard and just had a free-for-all about this idea of a rural roaming studio where people could make stuff and play. And eventually they moved on to these canes and created this kind of wigwam which grew across the whole floor of the atrium. And then we all just stood in 2 rows and then lifted it. It became a kind of big armadillo, if you like. So that was then translated into that, which is the clay-flies structures, or the looms as they became known, the rural roaming room. There are 5 of them. They're like Russian dolls. One fits inside the other. You can see from the size of the Land Rover how big they are. They're on little wheels, and it takes fairly fit people to sort of get them off and on. And they would tour the island and would create these pop-up voice places for people to come and engage in mini festivals, if you like. They're made from ash dye back. I think the only bits that were not sort of repurposed were the kind of brackets that had been made by an engineering company. And we did that in 4 places. The first one was Holyhead Breakwater Park. Then we did one, I think it was, I don't know what order we're going. Newbury Beach was the last one. Oriel Paris Mountain in on the island. And each one was about 3 or 4 days. So we did advanced advertising and got people involved. And there were lots of different activities. And it was just one of those things we weren't expecting it to be so exhilarating, is the word, I think, and lots of other words I could use. And we bussed in children from the schools who accepted the invitation. And they did poetry workshops. There was an animation workshop where they could make things out of things that they'd found. There was a beatbox workshop where they did rap based on what they'd seen. There was a sensory walk where they just followed this map, and each station had some stimuli that that your senses responded to in a different way. And it was such fun, but quite a lot to undertake. But the results were pretty magic. At one point, somebody gave us permission to start to collect the marram grass on Newbury, which is protected, to use it to thatch. So we started to thatch one of the structures, and it became known as Dougal, because when it was finished, it looked like Dougal from Magic Roundabout. And some clever folks put 2 white paper plates that we'd got for lunches with eyes and stuck them on the front of it. That's what it was. Very good. Printmaking, painting, drawing, poetry. We bought these bean bags, so there was a quiet space at every single one. There was a place where you could just go set away from the main activities, and you could just go and be quiet. So what we found is that the children and young people, that's what the CYP means, they've expressed what's good about the places, but also, not surprisingly, what they would like to see changed. And this is a people-centred approach where the stakeholders, the children and young people, are listened to, and we write it down, or they make pictures about it, and we collect it, and we've developed an archive of all these things, and then we'll be producing, as I say, journal articles, but I think what we would like to do is to create some kind of aid memoir for decision makers, whether they be politicians or planners or whatever. So there's some kind of way of capturing this vast amount of information into a usable form. But it's certainly interesting that the way that the bards activated and became a catalyst, if you like, for those conversations. And I think improvisation was key in that idea of we're not going to show you how. We sort of turn up in a tent and ask what question do you think we need to ask ourselves rather than we know what the question is. We wouldn't even assume that. So there was quite a bit of ethical oversight, should we say. And each of the projects had to go through quite a rigorous ethics process. So there's some slides now around about how this all came, how we make this work. So lots of workshops where we would get to know the technology, and it would be introduced by those people who have experience of it. And this chap on the slide here, Rupert, has got quite a lot of experience of mapping this kind of work in places like Africa, where assets that you would need to use to deploy food aid aren't even mapped. So you don't know as an agent where to send stuff. So he'd be out there with local people, and there'd be a map room set up in the UK, and they'd be sending data over, and he would be there with a bunch of local people riding around the bush on motorcycles with mobile phones, mapping things on the spot and sending it back, and then producing a map so people would know where things are. It might be a water hole, it might be a medical station. He is a fantastic guy. So we get to meet loads of really interesting people. We're taking this into schools. There's Lisa's map again, or rather, Lisa's Children and Young People's map. And we've hooked up with this notion that the teachers came up with, that this would be a really good fit with the Welsh back. So some of the students that came from schools like the school at Holyhead were tasked for the day with a project that related to their Welsh baccalaureate. They would be expected to produce that while they were there for the day. Poor things. So we've got mapping streams in schools to do with social, cultural and environmental, developing this idea of community scientists and just opening people up to what's there around them. Some surprising things I discovered. Met some children from Newborough, a village, who'd never been to the beach, ever. I don't just mean Newborough beach, I mean any beach. So when they came down, it was you had to kind of manage it, because it's quite a busy place, Newborough Warren. It can get a bit too busy, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they've never been. But it was things like that were quite interesting, a bit unsettling actually. It kind of made us check our assumptions. You're like, oh, you live on Anglesey, you must have a great life living on the beach all the time. Actually, no, you're wrong. So we came up with these projects, or rather, we didn't come up with projects. We as a collective came up with these projects about what schools could do with this stuff. And one of my favourites is this one. Your school is being offered a wind turbine, by a green energy charity. So teams of 3 or 4, you have to ask us to choose a site where you think it's best located. That's quite a hard thing to do, actually. So you need to know the landscape, check the neighbours, check the legalities. It's quite an interesting project. Environmental mapping, we came up with this idea of green future heroes. So people were engaged, and we produced these assets for schools that we can download them as a resource with learning objectives, and it relates to a particular curriculum strand. Social mapping activities, again, there's a resource there to download. Understand your area, and then this idea of using a bird's eye view, so maybe they'll use drone technology. So I've got quite a few slides of this, but this is the detail. Like without this detail, it would be like, oh great, so you had a fantastic time doing a project at Anglesey. That wasn't the point. Because there was quite a bit of pushback at the beginning. You know, what are these people from Cambridge and whatever coming over, you know, we say, well, we've come over and want to employ people from the island because they're the people who know what's going on. We're you know, so quite a bit of negotiation at the beginning through the various organisations that we're working with. This is quite a good one, the air pollution one, where people have got monitors on their bags so they can start to map good and bad areas. This was one of the best things that came out of it, the symbology. We realised that there weren't enough symbols on the key of the map to represent the children's imaginations. And I was really happy about that, because it meant you can start making your own symbols. And through working with a group called, we've got a really cool name called Play Disrupt, they started to use these collections of items to create symbols that represented the things that they wanted. Tangible, intangible features, a sense of their ideas about place. Because some of this stuff is sensuous knowledge. You know, it's the way you feel about something. It's not a lamppost. Or it might be a tree, but how do you feel about that tree? Do you like it, or are you scared of it? Or how do you get that stuff in to the conversation? The animation caught on pretty quickly. Could you make an animated icon for a map? So we tested it out. These are some of the digital tools that we've been using and developing. This is a very simple tree doing a bit of a dance. Very simple piece of cardboard on a stick with a camera phone. And workshops in schools involved processing all of this stuff into the digital. Okay, here we go. And then getting it onto the map using OpenStreetMap. So you get your symbol, or you go for the bank of symbols because there's a tree there that's growing at the end, or there's the dancing fir tree doing a jig. So the kids themselves came up with FlipperClip because we hadn't come across this app, and it worked really well. A young person recommended using an app called FlipperClip and quickly designed an animated gifts in a boat. Really lovely image. It was a simple interface that enabled people to do things, and we did some animation workshops on site. This is one of my favourites. Places to meet with friends. It's just two girls decided to embrace one another and then film it, and then they created this GIF. And I just think it's so lovely. Why can't maps have that? You know, why not? And they did more, like a tree falling on something that might be a dangerous place, or the beach, or just sports pitches. But there's some great conversations that were recorded with kids about where things are. Like one child talked about the footy pitch at Llangeddon was his favourite place, but it was too far for him to get there on his own. These are the two, Nia and what's his name, from Play Disrupt, and they won an award for their work. So this is the public map interface that you would see if you logged on, and you can see that there are public map centres, and you can have a look when you get home and check out what we've been building. There's another story, I'm going to erase now. We met a fellow called Walter, who was an ex-railway employee, and Walter Glyn Davis, and he was very interested in the old railway line between Hamworth and Gairwen that closed down in the axing. And we just got talking to him, and he got so many stories that one of the mappers just decided to record all of the stories that he had along the line and then map them along the line. So the journey along the map it's a journey along the line, but it's through his stories. And we met him at the old disused station. So these are the stories. And this is the Thunderer. You can't hear it, but because it was my birthday actually, and I filmed it on my iPhone because I just thought I need to capture this. He's got the stamp from the railway station, but he's also got a whistle, which is called the Thunderer. And it blew it. And he said the trains are coming. And Tansy, the mapper, but we both started blowing up at that point. But it brings to life a disused railway track through storytelling and enables people to kind of access it on a different level, and maybe one day that track will become something. There's been other things where we've used films to track change. This is somebody pointing out the changes in the landscape of Rangoid. Infamous people, there was a story about some drug magnate that one of the young people came across and decided to do a zine on it. So we've done lots of zine workshops, working with the town centre at Llangefni, around the High Street, which is something that needs to be looked at, and also around flood risk areas. Some of the flood risk areas aren't mapped adequately. And it's resulted in an exhibition that's on right now until September at the Design Museum in London, of all places. So you'll be able to see at Tools of Transition an exhibition of our project and the other 3 projects. We did a launch last September, and look who was there. How lucky is that? And he was our host. He hosted it, so I think he thinks that we're onto something. So we'll have to keep up with that. We did a report, me and Paula Wood, who's one of the researchers on the team. There's quite a large team of researchers on the project. Obviously, a big thanks goes to them. She produced this report for Ace Hub Wales, sorry, mine was blank then, on the wellbeing benefits of the kind of work that we're doing at the Clay Place projects. So try to kind of turn it into some kind of data form that's usable and evidence-based, if you like. So moving forward, we're developing use cases. The National Park, Snowdonia National Park, wants to use this mapping method and storytelling method as part of their planning going forward. We've opened the Wrexham room in Wrexham, obviously, in February, helped by the City Board and the Culture Trust. So we're in T-Power. This is Stefan, who's the coordinator there. And we've worked with over 500 people in our activities since then. There's lots of stats coming out of it. And it's based on this urban room network, a place where people can come and talk about what's going on in their locale. So it's a open 9 to 5. I'll just end on this.
It feels good to be asked my opinion because we find that a lot of young people aren't included in stuff like this. You can't not take a young person's advice and just go for it. It's just not going to work.
Mae'r ystafell Wrexham yn ddatblygiad cyffroes iawn yn Wrexham. Mae'n nofod i dynnu pobl ynghyd, i drafod dyfodol i ardal leol. Mae'n nofod i ymgysylltu pobl yn greadigol, i annog sgyrsiau creadigol ynghylch eu perthynas yn gyda lle, ein deimlad o le dyfodol dref y ddinas. Yn fwy na dim, mae'n nofod sy'n cael ei greu gan y perthnasau sy'n cael ei greu yma. Felly mae'n bedwar wal, ond mae hefyd yn le cyffroes sy'n dynnu pobl ynghyd a chreu gofod sy'n cael ei greu.
We need one of these in every community in Wales. What this is going to do is bring people together to talk about what matters to them, what they want from their community, what they want to see for the future, and think about the ideas to make that happen. So what an incredibly positive initiative to see launched today, and hopefully we can see it spread right across Cymru.
I think it's really important for Wrexham to have a space like this because the community really needs a voice and a space for them to voice their concerns, the things that they want to change in the community. I think people in Wrexham have a lot of ideas, but they might not always have the opportunity to express them. So I think having a space like this, which is inclusive and welcoming, is really important because it lets people have their say, and I think Wrexham really, really needs that.
Yeah, it is data, but it's not the sort of data I would have thought of as data before starting this job. Being more sort of art space, hasn't it? Making it more accessible to young people.
I like my friends at my school, and I like shopping. It's just a really nice community here. And Tea Pals, which I'm in now, it just brings everyone together. And I feel like Wrexham isn't a place for discrimination or any rudeness. It's just chill. That's what I like about it. What I change about Wrexham, more shops and stuff, because South Wales, it's got the capital, gets way more budget for their shops, their community centres, stuff like that. And we need to change that. We need to make it even, and we need to be able to expand Wrexham and just make it better, because it's already great, it needs more.
I don't think that would change a lot of things in Wrexham. Maybe the shops, because there's a lot of shops in town shutting down and stuff. If you want to buy something, you have to go somewhere more far away.
We've been mapping about the things that we like most about Wrexham. My interest was the gym and Welby Park, so it just shows that they really do care about the generation that has to come, and they're trying to fit the society for us. My idea based on Wrexham would be a more interesting place, for example, Eagles Meadow. It's a very good place, but the only thing is it's the only place that has a lot of good things you can go to, cinema, movies, food. I think we need more things like that, more stadiums, more places like Tempin and all that.
Speaking to the young people today, what I heard was how positive they were about the Wrexham room, their ideas about how they wanted the room to be, which I know people are listening to. And I also heard a real sense of pride in the city, in their community. They love to live here, they're proud of their community, they know what they want in their community, they know the things that matter to them in their area, and they want to be part of shaping that future. So we need to listen to them and make sure we do that. So it's really important that we have spaces like this where people can feel heard, they can express their views, and they can be involved in taking decisions about the future of their community and of Wales.
I think the fact that it's in the heart of the city, the fact that it's in Powell, in the hustle and bustle, you've got the market going on outside, there's everything going on. I think that's uniquely Wrexham in itself. You've got the whole community around you. And I think it's just going to be a brilliant space for people to come and be comfortable and welcomed within the centre of the city.
So that film was made at the opening. We managed to get Derek Walker, who's the commissioner, the Future Gen Commissioner, to open for us, which was really good. I like what he said about every town in Wales should have a room. I'll stop there, actually, and take any questions, but that's just a slide of some of the things that we've done in the room. There's probably time for half a question. Okay. The slides.